If you were 25 years old and had spent the last 8 years in a supermarket, and by the time you were 23, you were a store manager and running your own store, and you did that for 2 years until you were 25, and you were standing there and you had the opportunity to decide whether or not you would want to travel and make some sort of lifestyle that would enable you to travel full time, or at least strive to create one for yourself, would you take that? Okay, so you're probably wondering how the hell I managed to get here 2 years on with £3,000. So this is going to be a raw insight into the struggles and the choices that I made along the way that allowed me to sustain my travels over 2 years. And then we're going to look at 4 key areas that A, eat up your money, and B, what you can do about it to help cut those costs down. Alright guys, if you want to travel, or you want to work as a digital nomad, or you want to do both, then subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell next to the subscribe button so that you're notified when I upload a video. And the good thing is not only do I share my struggles and the raw journey that I go through towards becoming a digital nomad, I also share the raw journey and struggles of other people learning to become a digital nomad, so that I can inspire you and they can inspire you to take that leap. So without further ado, let's get into this video on how I traveled for 2 years on £3,000. Alright, so the journey started when I was traveling from Aberdeen, Scotland to Cairns in Australia. And while I was in Cairns, it took me 3 months to get from there to Sydney. And it was that point that I ran out of money. I had 72 cents to my name in Sydney, and I was absolutely broke. So £3,000 lasted me for 3 months. And I want to share with you how I recovered from that and what I did in order to use the money that I saved from work that I picked up along the way to sustain 2 years of travel. And you've got to bear in mind is that I have never ever saved any more than $3,000, which is £1,500 to continue traveling different locations in Australia and New Zealand. So hopefully you don't end up in that position either. And I think for me, I was really lucky because I was walking down the street in Sydney, came up to me, offered me a job as a street fundraiser, and that job actually stayed with me. And they have offices in various cities across Australia and New Zealand. Now before I get into that part, I essentially had to live with the person who recruited me as a street fundraiser in the street, which then takes me on to couch surfing. So although I've never used couch surfing before, I do have experience surfing on couches, if you like, and that's because I have actually been broke more than once. So it's happened a couple of times, to be fair, and I think it happens to most backpackers. They always run low on money and get really broke, and then they have to rely on someone or couch surfing or some sort of free accommodation to get by. And it just so happened to be that the people that I was working with, they helped me out along the way sometimes. So couch surfing is definitely a great thing to get involved with. It's a free accommodation platform on the internet. It's called couchsurfing.com, and you can just basically, you probably heard of it. You just sleep on people's couches for a few days and you have a really authentic experience with local people wherever you travel. So that's one of the things that I utilized while I was traveling. The next thing is obviously the job itself. So if you can actually find a job that actually allows you to travel places, then that is enabling you to travel, see places and earn money at the same time. And I was really lucky. I worked for a company called The Fundraising People in Australia. I'm gonna leave all the links in this video down below so you can go and check these guys out if you're planning on traveling in Australia. So essentially what these guys do is they recruit people and they get you to basically speak to the general public. Full time, it's usually 8 till 5 and it's usually about $20 an hour, and they pay you every 2 weeks. So you're looking at about $1,100 every 2 weeks, which is pretty good. But you got to bear in mind, if you stay in hostels usually average at about $30 per night. Okay, so you're looking at about $250 per week if you're staying for 7 nights in a hostel every week. So you've got to factor that in. So you're looking at about almost $500 just on accommodation off your $1,100 every 2 weeks. So back to where I was going with that, with the actual job. Yeah, these people have offices in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth and Auckland in New Zealand. So whenever I moved city, I also got a job with them in those cities. So that allowed me to continue traveling and earning money and seeing these cities every time I got to those places down East Coast Australia. And then obviously when I got to New Zealand, I worked with them in their Auckland office before I went and did farm work. So I was always earning money after I got broke severely in 72 cents in Sydney. Not only that, there was one hostel that I stayed in Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, and this hostel was called Dixon Central. I'll leave a link down below. And this hostel, basically I worked in that hostel for free accommodation, and I also became a manager in that hostel, and I earned a small amount of money on top of the free accommodation. All right, but let's say for example you can't find a job that enables you to travel and pick up work in various cities. What you can do as an alternative is you can actually work for a hostel for free accommodation, and sometimes that hostel will give you perks. In terms of my working conditions in the hostel that I worked in Canberra, I got to go on free tours with this hostel because they do like a tour. They take their workers out for maybe a 2-day break somewhere, and this is basically what I did. I went to a place called Pigeon Hill, I think it was, and they took us camping for the weekend. I think it was 3 nights or something, and it was really good. The beach was amazing and the people there were amazing. We had hot chocolate around the campfire. It was really good. So if you can actually find a hostel that basically enables you to go on free tours and give you free accommodation in exchange for working for them for a few hours a day, then that's a really good option as well. There's also other options that I do know of. I know of another YouTuber that uses Workaway. He travels in the Dominican Republic on the Workaway website. I think he found a hostel or something there. And you can do various other things on this website as well, so I'm going to leave those links down below too. 2 other things that I have not yet done but are definitely worth considering, especially if you are traveling with someone. You could, instead of doing a hostel, you could actually do Airbnb. And the reason why I say that is because Airbnb, unlike hostels, charge you per night and not per person. So instead of paying double per person in a hostel, go and stay in an Airbnb where you'll just be paying $30 a night for one of the cheaper places, and you can just basically split that between you and it becomes $15 per person. So you're actually saving $15 each, which is great. The other option is if you're traveling alone as a solo traveler or backpacker, consider doing a ride share. So find people who have camper vans or built up accommodation in various vans or whatever that they sleep in and travel. Consider that, and just go halfers on gas and food and things like that, and split the cost that way. Not only do you get to then travel really awesomely in a van, you also split all your costs between everyone else, and if there's more than 2 of you, then it becomes a really cheap option. I haven't yet tried that, but it's definitely tempting. I'm definitely considering doing something like that in the future. Alright, so moving away from accommodation, the next thing that I learned was how to find cheap food on the road while I'm traveling. So I was notorious in the beginning for relying on subways, restaurants, cafes, and all of those things that just eat up your money. And it wasn't until I ended up becoming broke in Sydney that I started to change how I approached food while I was traveling, and decided to focus on supermarkets. As supermarkets for me have been the cheapest way to find food. I always buy the value stuff in the supermarket, so the cheapest products, usually the supermarket's own brand, and that's been fine for me in terms of food. There's always a supermarket wherever you go in Australia and New Zealand, and so just relying on supermarkets for your food, you'll be fine. Next on my list is transport. So obviously you need to get from A to B wherever you're going. Most of the time I've always relied on public transport. Usually that works out to be the most cheapest. So public transport would be, hey buddy, how you doing? Hello. So usually public transport tends to be the most cheap option. In cities like Sydney and Melbourne and everything like that. Hey buddy, hey yeah. Okay, start again. In cities like Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Auckland, you can get a card that allows you to top up and then go on and use the buses and trains. And it's reasonable. You're looking at probably maximum, if you're traveling to work using public transport every day of the week, probably maximum about $50 to $60 per week. So definitely take public transport wherever you're going, because it's going to save me and you tons of money. And then obviously you've got things like activities. So obviously when you're going traveling, I, for one, want to have a good time. So some money needs to be set aside for activities. So how did I go about that? Well, first things first, I didn't splash out on activities, to be fair. I basically did a lot of free stuff like walking, going down the beach, seeing what's around the cities and various places that I visit, just usually by walking. But obviously there are things that you want to do, like tours and events and whatever. So there's a few things that I did, and one of them was Port Douglas. So in Port Douglas there's a beach there called 4 Mile Beach, and it's basically a beach that's supposedly 4 miles long, but it's actually longer than that. And that's a really tropical beach. It feels like you're in paradise. It feels like you're just, lost in one of the far corners of the world. I really enjoyed that. And then one of the other places that I stopped at along the way also was just after Cairns at Mission Beach. Mission Beach is this amazing beach, white sand with a beautiful island just off the coast. So that was good. And then after that, one of the other things that I saw was Magnetic Island, which is down in Townsville. You can get a ferry over there for about $20. Ferry's about 20 minutes. And Magnetic Island's really good. It's got an amazing sunset if you stay in Base Hostel. And Base Hostel again is about $30 per night. And really good sunset and sunrise. And because it's an island, you can rent a car for really cheap. I think we rented our car for, again, $30 for the day. It was a Hyundai we got, and yeah, we rented the car. We got to go and see various other parts of the island. So absolutely fantastic. Stayed there for about 3 nights, and the hostel has sort of like beach house type dorm rooms. So you've got separate beach houses, and they all have their own beach view and everything like that, so it's fantastic. After that, I think I went to Fraser Island after Magnetic Island. That was my next big trip. Fraser Island was a 3-day tour with Nomads, Fraser Island Tours with Nomads Hostel in Noosa, and so they basically take you over in an SUV onto a ferry over to Fraser Island, where you spend 3 nights there and you go and see all the main parts of Fraser Island. Fantastic that was. I made a 4-minute video of that tour of Fraser Island, and oh my god, that to this day it's still one of my most amazing experiences, and I highly recommend it. Stay at Nomads Hostel in Noosa, and you'll be able to get on the tour with them doing that as well. And I believe you can also go to Fraser Island from Rainbow Beach. I haven't been there, but if you're heading to Rainbow Beach, then definitely check out the tours for Fraser Island there. After Fraser Island, I started to hit the cities. So I started to hit Sydney, Melbourne, and then Adelaide, and then onto Auckland in New Zealand. So if I've missed any activities that I did, I'll leave them in the description below. And then lastly but not leastly is the subject of flights. Now there's 3 things that I do with flights. First thing is I always tend to go with Skyscanner, just because they compare all the airlines and give you the cheapest one. And secondly is I try to book a few weeks in advance. And thirdly, I always try and book the flights on a Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday to depart from wherever I'm going, because those 3 days at the beginning of the week tend to work out to be the cheaper days. So that works well for me. It gives me some cheap flights. But on the whole, how I've made it 2 years traveling on £3,000 is a mixture of luck and an even bigger portion of people helping me out along the way when I was struggling and not got a lot of money, letting me stay with them, sometimes lending me money as well until I got paid from my work, and then I paid them back, and just learning from my mistakes, using some common sense after I've made them to not make those mistakes again. And yeah, it's been a really good learning curve. Not very many people can say that they've travelled for 2 years with only starting with £3,000 and seeing all the experiences of Australia, New Zealand, and now obviously Canada, saving up some more money for the next adventures. So it's been really good, fantastic experience, wouldn't change it. I'm a lot wiser because of it, and yeah, that's really all I have. Alright, so that would be fan-dabby-dozy. Thank you very much for watching, and just remember, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification button next to the subscribe button, which looks like a bell, and that will notify you when I upload my next video so you don't miss it. And until that time, have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. If there's anything else that you want to know that I've missed in this video, then leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you in the comments section.